So for this video, I'm going to be going through each of the green heroes that are currently in Artifact, and we're going to talk about whether or not I've been seeing them played and constructed, how I feel about them in draft, and we're going to talk about each of their abilities, their stats, and their kind of overall usefulness. So right out of the gate we have Abaddon. 4 attack, 9 health, no armor. 4 attack is great, clears out melee creeps, that's important. 9 health is enough health to survive a lot of the damage from opening heroes. At 9, you're really only worried about being matched up against a Debbie, matched up against a Phantom Assassin, or maybe a Bounty Hunter that catches the proc. Other than that, Abaddon's likely going to survive that first round at a minimum. Now, Abaddon also has an activated ability that has a 2-round cooldown, and it says fully heal Abaddon and give it damage immunity this round. So this lets Abaddon kind of hang out forever in a lane unless he's just outright condemned. Like if you throw a Stonehull Cloak on Abaddon, there's a good chance Abaddon just doesn't die unless it's from like coup de grace, annihilation, something like that. Abaddon can continue to keep healing himself, get that damage immunity, and again, because he has 4 attack, he's always clearing out melee creeps in front of him. He's just like a consistent presence in a lane, a consistent threat, and that's pretty neat. Very useful in draft. I'm not seeing Abaddon played a lot in constructed right now, but I am a fan of Abaddon in draft. Now, the signature card for Abaddon is also very flexible and useful. It says, purge your opponent's effects from a unit, give that unit +2 armor, +2 retaliate this round. That is actually pretty decent for just 2 mana. So if you use it on your own units, it's purging enemy effects off of them. So if your unit was hit by, say, viscous nasal goo from Bristleback, that part is gone. You can get rid of the debuff. The fact that it also gives you armor, gives you retaliate, means you're doing a little bit more damage and surviving damage. So it's a great combat trick when you're matched up against something. But the reason it's a very flexible signature card is it does say purge a opponent's effects from a unit. So you can use this on enemies, you can use this on creeps if you need to keep your creep alive, but the reason you might want to use it on enemies is to get rid of any long-standing buffs they may have received. If an enemy hero, for example, had God's Strength put on it from Sven, or if an enemy hero has been buffed by Mists of Avernus, or heaven forbid, Time of Triumph, you can purge those effects with Aphotic Shield. Time of Triumph specifically, I would much rather, for 1 round, give my opposing hero +2 armor and +2 retaliate than deal with the Time of Triumph buff for the rest of the game. So this is a flexible signature card, great combat trick. Pair that with a very resilient hero that can just hang out in a lane for forever, and this is a solid draft choice. Again, I'm not seeing Abaddon played much in constructed, and that's largely just because for constructed uses, I think there are better green heroes. Drow is one of the best heroes in the game, and some of the other ones like Lycan or Omni Knight, for example, either have slightly better signature cards or they just pressure the lane better. Like Lycan is really solid at pressuring a lane, so we'll talk about him when we get there. So I feel like Abaddon is like on the cusp of playability. The big problem is most constructed decks do have some solid ways of condemning heroes, so the healing from Abaddon matters less in constructed, but in draft, where they may not have as many ways to condemn heroes, Abaddon's value goes up, and I really like him in draft. Next up, we have Chen. Very similar stats to Abaddon, 4 attack, 9 health, active ability, just like Abaddon, but on twice the cooldown. This has an active cooldown of 4 rounds, but you gain control of an enemy creep. That's a pretty powerful activated ability. Not very powerful if you're just stealing a melee creep, mind you. But if you're stealing something big like a Thunderhide pack, that can really swing things in your favor. Now, that being said, there are times where you might need to just steal a melee creep because maybe you're getting rid of the melee creep that's in front of your axe or something else and you're trying to pressure the opponent's tower, then that's fine. But either way, the power of Chen is in that activated ability, and it's all going to come down to whether or not you get a good target with that to justify running him. the stats are not great, and without something like what Abaddon had, where you're just sticking around for forever, it is okay, you know, like just pretty mediocre hero at that point. Now, the signature card here, Hand of God, costs 7 mana, so it's pretty expensive. It does say fully heal each ally, so this means your creeps and your heroes, and give allies damage immunity this round. This is very strong in draft, especially in hotly contested lanes, because it can push things in your favor. It is not very strong, however, in constructed, and there's a reason for that, and that's because this doesn't stop annihilation, and if you don't have initiative, it doesn't stop like Thunder God's Wrath or something like that, for example. So Chen just doesn't see a lot of play in constructed. Everything about Chen is just too slow. The long activated ability, the like very middle of the road mediocre stats, the fact that this costs 7 mana and it's, you know, it's a tide turner in a lane, but it's very, it's just, it looks much better on paper than what it actually is in practice. I'm not going to say you're never going to have an amazing Hand of God, but it's not going to be like every time I play Hand of God, I'm satisfied either. So Chen just not seeing a lot of play in constructed. I would consider running him in draft if I'm running green and I have some mediocre choices for my other heroes. But again, Chen is like a very slow hero. Not necessarily one of my favorites right now. And not a lot of people I've seen have been playing him. So I feel like other people have assessed him very similar to me. Next up, we have Dark Seer. Dark Seer has 5 attack, 9 health. So again, 9 health, decent. 5 attack, enough to clear out those melee creeps. Activated ability of Surge. This has a 2-round cooldown. And you move another ally to another lane. This is actually really useful. It's even more useful if you're new to the game and you have not really nailed down proper hero placement yet. Because if you get yourself into a bind, you can use Dark Seer to like help load up on a lane, win a lane, and then start shipping your heroes or even some of your high priority creeps, for example, over to other lanes and try to win them. So Dark Seer is one of those heroes that early on is very, very useful. The better you get at recognizing proper hero placement, the more Dark Seer's value starts to drop. Now, Dark Seer has, in my opinion, a pretty decent signature card. You modify a unit with +3 Retaliate. Because it's modify, it's, you know, permanent on your heroes. And +3 Retaliate isn't bad. Now, the problem with Retaliate as a damage source is it doesn't help you do anything for pressuring towers. It's great when you're in combat for killing whatever is across from you, but it doesn't help you pressure towers. So, Ion Shell is okay. You know, it's nothing to write home about. It's not useless. Good combat trick. Everything about Dark Seer in terms of value comes from the activated ability. And like I said, if you're new to the game, you can get a lot of use from it just because you might end up with stuff in lanes that would otherwise be stranded there or feel stranded. So don't feel bad about using him in draft if you are new. As you get better, I think that you'll value him less and less, and you'll get to the point where you might not even want to consider running him, even if you do end up with him in draft. So there's like this weird transition when you start playing the game. Like I remember I used to really, really like Dark Seer, and now I'm less and less excited about him. So don't feel bad if you have to draft him, and you can get value out of him, but you know, as you get better, I think you'll see that his value kind of goes down as your experience goes up. Alright, next up we have Drow Ranger. Drow Ranger is the best green hero in the game by far, and arguably the best hero in the game out of all the colors. Drow Ranger is probably my favorite hero because she is just that powerful. If you're playing green, you're playing Drow in constructed. If you are presented with a Drow, you're taking it in draft. If you're presented with a second Drow, you're double taking it, and you're extremely excited because Drow has 4 attack, so it's high enough to kill enemy melee creeps. 7 health is like the weak spot of Drow. 7 health isn't the lowest health I've ever seen, but it does put her in a danger zone. But that's like the only drawback. Her passive is the Precision Aura. Other allies in all lanes get +1 attack. That's all lanes. That means Drow helps you pressure regardless of where she is on the board. She can help you kill towers faster. She can help you control the board better. She's great in just about any archetype, just with her passive alone. But to make it worse, her signature card is Gust. Gust is 4 mana, silence enemy heroes this round. So this silences all heroes in the lane. It's not board wide across all 3 lanes, but it doesn't matter. Even in just a singular lane, if you have initiative, we talk about how powerful initiative is in Artifact. If you have initiative and you start the round by playing Gust, your opponent can only play items. And they can't activate them. They can just play items. Like that's their only recourse for the rest of that combat phase till you go to the next lane. So Gust is important for aggressive decks because sometimes you expect like an Annihilation to come and you can shut that down. It's important for control decks because sometimes you might expect your opponent to kill one of your heroes, or maybe they're going to play ladders if they're running like Lycan or whatever the case may be. They're going to do something and you can use Gust to buy yourself time. Gust is fantastic for control decks as well, because in control mirrors you can lock somebody out and then load up a lane for like, even if it's just temporary value, even if you eat the Annihilation next turn, that ebb and flow in control mirrors is important. Gust is very important in combo decks. So the Selamine Storm deck that is pretty popular relies on Gust because a lot of times you want to open with Gust so your opponent can't interrupt your combo. There's nothing worse than like trying to go off a Selamine Storm and you play a bunch of stuff and then your opponent just annihilates your board. But if you Gust, they can't do that, and you can flood your board and you can buff everything and you can basically kill a tower in one turn before they get the chance to respond. Gust is just powerful. It's an enabler. It shuts down a lane for a turn, and that is huge. And when you combine that with somebody who lets you pressure better in every other lane and still has 4 attack, Drow is, again, in my opinion, just the best hero in the game. You want her in Constructed, you want her in Draft. If you get 2 of her in Draft, it's absolutely bonkers because then your melee creeps one-shot other melee creeps. So you really turn up the pressure in those games. In case you haven't noticed, I'm a fan of Drow. And even if you don't like her for all of those reasons, she looks like Rihanna too, right? Next up, we have Enchantress. Enchantress is a green hero that has 4 attack and 8 health. 4 attack is good. It allows you to clear out those melee creeps that are positioned across from her. 8 health is okay. It's a little low, but she makes up for it with her passive ability. Now, her passive ability gives her +2 regeneration, and it gives her neighboring allies +2 regeneration. Regeneration is healing done during the combat resolution of a lane, and healing is done at the same time as damage. So if a unit would survive because of regeneration, then it will survive. If you've got a creep, for example, that only has 2 health left, but it's next to Enchantress and it would take 2 damage during combat, it's still going to survive with 2 health because she heals it for 2, and that occurs at the exact same time. Now, this only applies during combat resolution, though. So it doesn't reduce damage from like a Conflagration or from something like Tower Barrage or other spells or effects. It's not like armor, but it is healing that is applied during combat, and that's really important. Now, Enchantress has a signature card of Verdant Refuge. This is an improvement, and when you play this in a lane, it gives all allies in that lane +1 armor. So between her improvement and her passive, Enchantress has the ability to create a very resilient lane. Not just her, right? So units like Abaddon that we saw earlier were really good at just keeping themselves alive. Enchantress is good about keeping herself alive and others alive, and it creates this slow but steady snowball effect as enemy units die, but yours survive because of the armor, because of the regen, and it starts to kind of snowball into this like impending doom of a lane. and your enemy needs like condemn effects to get rid of it, something like annihilation, or at least something that'll do a lot of damage at once. So, you know, at any cost, for example, might help clear out the lane as well. So, as such, Enchantress doesn't see a ton of play in Constructed because those cards are a lot more common. But I think she's really good in Draft. In Draft, when you don't have a lot of direct condemn effects, it can be annoying as all get up to try to push through with just damage an Enchantress trench, as I call it, right? Where they've put down 1 or 2 Verdant Refuges, they've got their Enchantress there. It's just going to be this slow push from hell, and it can be really hard to contest that. So Enchantress, in my opinion, very, very good at just value over time in Draft, and I'm a big fan of her there. Next up we have Farvin the Dreamer. This is the green basic hero. 4 attack is good, 10 health is okay. His passive ability is that the allied neighbors have +1 armor, so he doesn't get armor, but gives the allied neighbors +1 armor. All around okay body. The passive ability is not as good as like Treant Protector, so Farvin the Dreamer is like a poor man's Treant Protector. And then what makes him even worse, and again this is why he's a basic hero, is that his signature card, Prowler Vanguard, isn't as good as Treant Protector's signature card either. Prowler Vanguard has a 0 attack, 6 health creep, and it just says the Vanguard's allied neighbors have +1 armor. So again, this creep doesn't attack, this creep doesn't have armor. And the thing about this creep is that it gives allied neighbors +1 armor, but it's very unlikely that you're going to get immediate value on both sides of this right away. Typically when you play a creep, something will be on the left of it or on the right of it, but not both. The only time that you immediately put this in between something is if you've already got things positioned and then something in the middle dies and your opponent's unit stayed alive. Because if they both die, then the lanes collapse, right? But if your enemy has something on your side die and it survives, then yeah, you could put Prowler Vanguard in the middle of your 2 units, give both of them +1 armor, but now you've also just put this in harm's way. So outside of that, the only other time you get double value out of Prowler Vanguard right away is if you're playing it on either end, right? So that it's protecting something on its left or on its right away, and then you play another creep immediately afterwards. And those scenarios just don't happen very often. That's why I'm saying this, right? I'm doing this long-winded example to explain to you that this just isn't very good for a signature card. The fact that it also doesn't attack isn't great. It can be useful for stalling. It is still a body, so if there's an unblocked axe or something that you want to not have damage your tower, you can use this as like a sacrificial lamb of sorts, throw it in the way, but signature card's not that great. Farvin the Dreamer has a big enough body that he's not useless if you do have to run it. If you draft some really good green cards but don't get good green heroes, like you can use Farvin and it's not the end of the world, but he's a basic hero for a reason. So let's move on to Lycan, who is not a basic hero. I'm a big fan of Lycan. He actually might be my second favorite green hero. 4 attack, good, clears melee creeps. 10 health is respectable. His passive ability is that Lycan's allied neighbors have +2 attack. That's really important because that means if he has melee creeps on either side of him, those melee creeps will auto-kill opposing melee creeps. And then they also attack for 4. So Lycan is a great way to pressure an enemy lane or an enemy tower very early in the game. He is very good in aggressive or mid-range strategies. His signature card is a creep itself that's a 3/3, and then it modifies itself with +1 attack and +2 health after the combat phase. The +2 health is important because that means even if you have to play this in front of an opposing melee creep, this will survive the initial combat and then modify itself with +2 health so that it's set up to survive the next combat as well, and kind of continue to do so unless some sort of combat trick or effect is played, right? So Savage Wolf is a safe play in front of an enemy melee creep that will eventually clear it out and then keep modifying itself to get bigger and bigger and bigger. Now, if you play a Savage Wolf next to your Lycan, it's even better because now it's attacking for a lot more and it's going to keep modifying itself as well. So solid signature card as far as a creep goes. Solid passive ability, good stats. Lycan is just not flashy, but very effective, especially in decks that want to generate early pressure. Next up we have Magnus. Magnus is another green hero that I like. I guess I should also mention real quick before, Lycan does see play in Constructed, does see play in Draft. Lycan sees play in Constructed decks again that want to be like aggressive early on. There are some green-red decks, for example, that utilize them. So I did want to mention that Lycan is the second green hero that we've seen that sees regular play in Constructed outside of Drow Ranger. Magnus. Magnus is got 4 attack, 1 armor, 9 health, just decent stats. No passive ability, no active ability. Signature card is pretty strong though. You modify a unit with +3 attack and +3 cleave. So the cleave helps you clear out opposing creeps, get that extra damage in. The +3 attack is very, very powerful in terms of generating pressure. Magnus is on the cusp, I feel like, of being Constructed playable, but I think that the presence of some of the other green heroes makes him like just that tier below Constructed playable. We've already seen Lycan, we've seen Drow Ranger, and we've yet to see Omni Knight and Trevor Protector, who I think are just slightly above poor Magnus. But this is a solid signature card, solid stats. Magnus is definitely the kind of hero that if you're playing it in Draft, you do not feel bad about it. The body is useful, the card is useful. Just overall a pretty solid, pretty okay pick for Draft. So next up we have Omni Knight. Omni Knight is also played in Constructed, has 5 attack, it's a solid attack value, especially for a green hero. 12 health is a lot of health, very resilient. Has an activated ability on a 2-round cooldown of heal a unit for 3, so can help keep your units alive. This does count for creeps as well, so we can help push a lane in that regard, as it's not just healing himself for other heroes. And then we were talking about the resiliency of Enchantress and her aura earlier, because regeneration can do that for you. Well, Omni Knight's signature card is for 4 mana, you modify a green hero so that allies have +2 regeneration. Not allied neighbors like Enchantress, but allies. And this is why, in my opinion, Enchantress just doesn't see playing Constructed. It's because her body is smaller than Omni Knight, and it's only neighbors. Whereas Omni Knight is a bigger body, has an active ability, and then this signature card can basically apply the regeneration lane wide. Omni Knight is just overall better at pressuring lanes and keeping things alive long term. So Omni Knight, as I said, does see playing Constructed, is a fantastic pick in Draft, is one of the better green heroes. I think he's probably tied for 3rd with Trevor Protector. I like Lycan a little bit more. I think that whether or not you play Trevor Protector or Omni Knight depends on the kind of deck you want to play, but Omni Knight is solid in my opinion. Very, very playable. Next up we have Rix. Rix has a small body, only 3 attack, so he's not clearing out melee creeps. Only 7 health, so he's at danger of dying. But Rix's passive is that he has rapid deployment. So this means that if he dies, he gets to be redeployed the next round, does not have to spend a round back at the fountain waiting his turn. That's a very, very powerful effect, which is why Rix has such a small body. Rix is the kind of hero that, if built around, I do someday see being potentially Constructed playable. I think you have to do it with like Reptile Signets, and you have to give him an item early so that he can clear out melee creeps, and I think that's the big problem. The other problem is that, yes, rapid deployment is great, but I also don't want to have to keep rapid deploying. Like, I'd rather have my heroes just survive and or not give my opponent 5 gold every time my hero dies. So like, there's pros and cons, but rapid deployment is such a powerful effect that it wouldn't shock me if Rix is someday playable. right now he's just not seeing a ton of constructed play. And he's not really seeing a lot of draft play because in draft you have less consistent ways to keep him alive, so he's even more of a liability. Now, his signature card is strong. It's 5 mana to silence a unit. So if you use this on a hero, you're preventing that hero from contributing to playing cards of that color. The problem, though, especially for constructed, is that why pay 5 to silence one unit when I can pay 4 with Drow Ranger's signature ability to silence all of them? You know? Like, it's not even close. Silence enemy heroes. Silence a unit for 1 more mana. So yeah, Rick's, again, rapid deployment's really strong. Maybe someday he sees some constructed play, but right now in the closed beta, he's just not. He's just too much of a liability with the way things are. Maybe somebody finds some cool new way to break him. But as of filming this, Rick's is nobody's favorite. All right, we have Treant Protector. So Treant Protector is really, really solid. One of the better green heroes. 4 attack, again, as we know, important. Clears out enemy melee creeps. 10 health means that Treant Protector is resilient in the early stages. His aura, his passive ability is that allied neighbors have +2 armor. So much like Enchantress, this can help protect your melee creeps. Start creating that slow push, that slow snowball-y like effect in a lane. Not the same as like Lycan, right, who does it in an aggressive manner, but does still matter. Now, the reason that Treant Protector sees a lot of play, though, is the signature card. So this is a 4 mana creep that has a 2/6 body, so the body is respectable for a creep, but it also says your tower has +1 mana. So in decks that want to ramp their mana up, Treant Protector is solid. Again, good body, good stats, decent aura, and then gives you a signature card that has decent stats and will ramp. There's not a lot to dislike about this card in a deck that wants to ramp. Typically, Treant Protector is played in decks that want to ramp up to some sort of big finisher. The most common one being Time of Triumph, excuse me. I got so excited I started slurring my words. Yeah, red-green, there's a couple of different decks that do it. One is like an itemless version, one is a more traditional like mid-rangey version, but the point is you use things like Stars Align and Selamine's Favor and Roseleaf Druid here from your Treant Protector to ramp up to 8 mana in a lane, play your Time of Triumph on at least 2 heroes, and then use them to pressure the opponent. So, very popular strategy, all-around good hero for doing it. In draft, even if you don't have Time of Triumph, being able to ramp is important. The fact that the signature card gives you a creep, you know, a body that is a respectable body is important. His stats are solid. Treant is good. He sees playing constructed, sees playing draft. Not much else to say. I think I've beat that horse to death, but you get the idea. So, last we have Viper. Viper has 4 attack, respectable. 10 health, also respectable. Has a passive ability of when a unit deals battle damage to Viper, modify that unit with -1 attack. The passive ability is annoying. It's not like game breaking, right? You're not gonna like win because you got all of your enemy heroes down to 0 attack or anything, because they have to deal battle damage to Viper, so you gotta have a lot going your way. They have to be lined up against Viper. Viper has to take battle damage from them repeatedly, you know, enough to get their attack lower. I mean, if you're trying to get somebody like Axe to lower their attack a substantial amount, then that means your Axe has punched your Viper a lot of times. That's probably not going to end well for you. But it is an annoying passive. I find most often what it actually does is it just means that Viper takes less and less damage from the creeps that it's matched up against. If Viper is across from a melee creep, it's just going to kill it right away because of the 4 attack. But if it's up against something like, for example, the Roseleaf Druid that we just saw from Treant Protector, it's going to take 2 damage, and then the next turn it's only going to take 1 damage. Same thing with some of the enemy heroes from like blue that only have like 2 attack or 3 attack. that can really mitigate the damage that Viper takes in those scenarios as well. So the passive is okay. It's annoying, but he's got good enough stats that you feel okay if you play Viper. Viper's signature card is 3 mana, and it says give a unit deal 2 piercing damage to this unit before the action phase until it dies. I really wish this did 2 damage up front. It doesn't though, so this is like a you play it and wait. Now the plus side, where this does actually really benefit you, is against units with high armor. So if you do play this on an axe, if you do play this on like a Mazzy or somebody who's been buffed with a bunch of armor items, it does give you a slow but inevitable way to kill said unit, said hero. But you do have to wait multiple turns. Like the first turn you play this, it does nothing. And then next turn, it does happen before the actual action phase. So if it's enough to kill that unit, then it negates their ability to play cards of that color. That's actually, in my opinion, the best use of Viper Strike, and it takes some finesse to do, but it's like the long-term planning. If you have an enemy hero that has like 4 health, but you know that like 2 turns from now, you're gonna have enough mana to play like a really big, powerful card, or there's just some big swing play you want to set up, you can try to play Viper Strike so that next turn it takes 2 damage, and then the following turn, if they haven't healed, it'll take 2 damage, kill that hero, and then your opponent won't be able to play cards of that color. But it's a long-term setup, and it's a lot of finesse, and your opponents have a lot of time to react because, again, it's over time, and so they can buy a healing item from the shop, or whatever the case may be, throw another health item on them. It's just really hard to do. Like I said, I wish this did 2 piercing damage up front as well, but right now it's okay, right? It does consistent damage to something. It'll eventually kill whatever you put it on, maybe. Maybe not. Like Stonehall Cloak kind of negates this in a certain way. So yeah, sorry, I'm trying to sound really positive. I'm not a huge fan of Viper, just because I think the signature card is not very great. Stats are fine, right? Like I said, 4 attack great, 10 health great, passive ability certainly annoying. Viper Strike okay, but Viper's just not one of the better green heroes. There are certainly other ones that I would rather have. Viper does not see constructed play, in case you haven't put that together yet. Does see some play in draft, just because I do think Viper's probably better than Farvin the Dreamer most cases, but Viper's not the kind of hero that like you're first picking. Honestly, I wouldn't even take it with, you know, a second or a third pick in a pack. If Viper falls to me late in a pack and I do end up playing green, then yeah, I'll play it over Farvin the Dreamer, but not going to see a ton of play. And that is it for the green heroes. So thanks for listening to my ranting and my rambling. These videos tend to get a little bit long, so the longer they go, the more scattered my brain gets, but I appreciate it. So if you made it this far, thank you. Thanks for listening, and I hope to catch you next time.